Every sunset on Mars is blue, not the loud blue of oceans, not the soft blue of skies that breathe. A thin, impossible blue painted by dust so fine it can stay aloft for months hanging in a carbon dioxide hush. And somewhere beneath that fading light, a machine watches it happen alone on a planet that does not remember warmth. As you listen to me now, two explorers are still awake on the red world: Perseverance and Curiosity. They are separated by nearly 3,700 kilometers, farther than the distance between many countries on Earth, each wandering its own slice of frozen desert, each carrying a small portion of our collective curiosity like a candle in an Enoch spear. Airless cathedral. When the sun rises there, their cameras become our eyes. Their sensors become our fingertips. They taste the chemistry of stones. They feel the bite of wind. They listen to the crackle of radiation in the soil. And then across tens of millions of kilometers, they whisper their findings back to a species that cannot yet follow. This is the paradox of Mars. We send lifeless things to search for life. And in doing so, we give them a kind of purpose that feels eerily alive. They do not breathe. They do not dream. But they endure. They keep moving when everything around them is designed to stop motion cold, that can shatter metal dust, that can starve sunlight silence. So complete it feels like a physical force. And the images they send, those mosaics of rust and shadow, are not just photographs. They are postcards from deep time. Proof that planets can change their minds, that a world can once hold rivers and then lock them away beneath stone, that oceans can vanish and leave behind only their handwriting in the rocks. Tonight we're going to travel across Mars through real images and the stories they carry, moments of improvisation that worked, failures that stung tension, that tightened into dread, and then broke into relief. We'll meet 5 mechanical heroes: Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, Perseverance, and we'll follow their tracks like faint signatures on a world that tries to erase everything. Because out there under a blue Martian dusk, every meter matters, and every signal could be the last. Before we follow their tracks any farther, we need to understand the stage they're crossing, because Mars is not just Earth, but colder. It is a different philosophy of planet, a world that feels like it's been left outside the universe too long. Mars is a silent colossus of rock and dust, geologically quiet, draped in a thin veil of rust. That redness, so iconic it borders on myth, comes from iron oxidized over immense spans of time. A planet slowly turning to powder, molecule by molecule, as if even stone can age. Beautiful, yes. Welcoming, not even remotely. The atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, so rarefied, it's like standing 35 kilometers above Earth, higher than where most aircraft dare to fly. The pressure is so low that if you warmed exposed ice with sunlight, it wouldn't melt into liquid water. It would sublimate, skipping the comfort of a flowing phase and vanishing straight into vapor. Rain here is not weather, it's archaeology, a fossil memory that may not have happened for billions of years. At dawn, temperatures can plunge to minus 80 degrees Celsius. By noon, the swing can brush 100 degrees. In winter, it gets so cold at the poles that part of the atmosphere itself freezes and falls onto the ground as dry ice, a seasonal collapse of the sky. And still, besides Earth, Mars is the most hospitable world we can reach. Not because it's kind, but because it's close. Because it once had the raw ingredients that life seems to require: water, energy, chemistry, time. That's why we keep sending our machines there, packed with cameras, sensors, and instruments, trying to catch the faintest trace of ancient biology, a signature in stone, a pattern too stubborn to be explained away. But the road to this moment was not heroic from the start. The first to touch Martian ground successfully was the Soviet Mars, 3 inches, 1,971. It transmitted for about 20 seconds, and then went silent. In 1976, Viking 1 and Viking 2 delivered the first sharp, undeniable images of the surface. They landed, they stayed, they measured, but they did not roam. Only in 1997 did Sojourner, small and brave, creep a little over 100 meters in 3 months. Short in distance, huge in meaning. For the first time, humanity was driving on another planet. And with that single act, those tiny wheel tracks pressed into alien dust, we began to turn Mars from a distant symbol into a place. Real roaming began in 2004 when two metal twins, Spirit and Opportunity, fell to opposite sides of Mars like punctuation marks in the planet's story. Expectations were modest. 90 days, the engineers said. A season of work, a few panoramas, some chemistry, a graceful goodbye. Mars did not agree. Spirit lasted more than 6 years. It crossed nearly 8 kilometers over crater rims and basalt slabs, taking breathtaking panoramas that looked like the ruins of a world that once tried. Then the trap, a treacherous dune. The sand swallowed its wheels. It fought anyway, stuck, but still working, still sending, still trying to be useful as dust slowly veiled its solar panels. Power dwindled. The transmissions grew quiet, and then nothing. Not drama, not collapse, just silence arriving like night. On the other side of the planet, opportunity became something else entirely. Stubbornness made metal. 14 years. Storms, plains, jagged fields of rock, sharp enough to tear wheels. And it kept going with the calm of something that knows its purpose. It found mineral blueberries, little spheres rich in hematite, a stamp of water. It identified sulfate layers, evaporation brines, ancient wet chemistry preserved like a confession. It descended into craters as if approaching extinct shorelines, the rover, a tiny moving thought inside a vast geological sentence. But Mars always collects its debts. In 2018, a global dust storm swallowed the sky. A quarter of the planet disappeared under a thickening haze that turned noon into permanent Halloween. Less than 1% of sunlight reached the surface. The winds could reach near 100 kilometers per hour. Yet the air was so thin, the force felt ghostly enough to lift dust, but not enough to truly clean it away. For a rover that depended on sunlight, it was starvation. Opportunity tried to hibernate. It never woke. The world held its breath, clinging to a final message interpreted by the team, "My battery is low, and it's getting dark." Not poetry written by a rover, just the human mind, hearing heartbreak in a machine's last telemetry. And still, the grief was real, because 14 years of endurance is long enough for even metal to feel like a companion. And the danger doesn't begin after landing. It begins in the descent. Mars demands its 7 minutes of terror. The interval between atmospheric entry and touchdown, when everything must work autonomously, perfectly with instructions written months earlier. No joystick, no live correction, just a silent fall through thin air and fire where a single mistake becomes a wreck you'll never touch. Even driving is a kind of slow-motion risk. The rover teams cannot steer in real time. Earth and Mars can be separated by 25 to 200 million kilometers, and a radio signal can take 6 to 44 minutes to cross one way. Commands are planned in careful sequences. The rover executes alone, checking slope terrain, every wheel bite, reading the ground like a blind traveler reading Braille. Those sped-up rover videos you've seen. That's the truth compressed. In real time, Mars is explored deliberately, meter by meter, because one rock edge can cut a wheel, one hidden dune can become a mechanical grave, and every step forward is taken on a planet that offers no rescue. And yet, despite the razor rocks, the time delay, the slow ritual of command and consequence, Mars began to reveal something stranger than landscapes. It began to reveal its memory. Opportunity's discoveries were the first shiver hematite spheres, sulfate veins, layers that only make sense when water has been present, moving, soaking, evaporating, returning. In one emblematic image taken from orbit, you can see a crater 750 meters wide, and inside it, a tiny rover descending the slope like a solitary pilgrim walking down toward the shore of an extinct sea. It is difficult to look at that and not feel the vertigo of scale, how small our emissary is, and how vast the evidence around it. Curiosity arrived in 2012 and chose an even deeper archive, Jezero Crater, 154 kilometers across its walls, steep as broken cliffs. At its center rises Mount Sharp, a layered mountain, more than 5 kilometers tall, built from sediments stacked like chapters. Curiosity drilled into the ground and found clay minerals. In certain samples, about 2% of the material was water, not liquid, but locked inside the structure of grains, a chemical echo of wetter days. Then came the mud cracks, fractured mosaics that look like dried lakebed on Earth, rounded pebbles polished by currents. sediment layers laid down with the patience of seasons. Gale wasn't just a crater. It was a basin that once held a lake fed by streams, a place where water lingered long enough for chemistry to do what chemistry does when it has time. And on a clear afternoon shortly after sunset, curiosity looked west and captured something that collapses the mind into silence, a pale dot above the horizon. Earth, a world of oceans and storms and cities, reduced to a pinprick, suspended in the Martian twilight roughly 160 million kilometers away. It's a reminder, not just of distance, but of fragility. The idea that everything you've ever loved fits inside a speck of light. Curiosity kept moving. The 2-year plan stretched into more than a decade. Its wheels grew battered. Dust collected. The frame aged, but it climbed Mount Sharp anyway, crossing black dunes of basaltic sand clay hills and layered outcrops that read like climate history written in stone. Then Perseverance arrived in Jezero Crater, a 45-kilometer basin that holds one of Mars's most haunting features, a fossilized river delta preserved in high relief. Channels converging like veins, a fan of sediments that could only have been shaped by flowing water. Perseverance fired lasers into hundreds of rocks, tasted their chemistry, drilled cores, and found materials, carbonates, clays, lithified mud that are born where water and time collaborate. And it did something unprecedented. It sealed those drilled samples into metal tubes and placed them on the surface like time capsules, small gleaming promises left behind for a future mission to retrieve. The plan is to bring them to Earth in the 2030 seconds to finally test Mars's story with instruments too large, too precise, too hungry for power to ever ride on a rover. Because on Mars, the deepest questions rarely come with clean answers. Even now, a ghostly signal lingers in the air, methane detected in faint traces by Curiosity, and by orbiters sometimes rising and falling with the seasons. Methane can be made by geology mineral reactions underground, or it can be made by biology, by living things exhaling their chemistry into the dark. No one can say which, but on a planet this silent, even a whisper of methane feels like the universe leaning in to speak. If Mars once ran with rivers, if Jezero's delta truly was a mouth where water emptied into a lake, then the question is not whether the planet changed. The question is, what could take an entire world and dry it into a desert? The most accepted explanation begins deep inside the planet, where you can't film it, where you can't photograph it, only infer it from the scars left behind. Mars is small, about 1/10 Earth's mass. And in planetary terms, mass is destiny. With less internal heat, Mars cooled faster. Its core lost the churning vigor needed to sustain a global magnetic field. On Earth, that magnetic field is an invisible mercy, deflecting charged particles, shielding the atmosphere from the full force of the solar wind. On Mars, that shield faded early. And once it did, the planet's upper atmosphere was exposed like skin under a storm. Over millions, then billions of years, energetic particles stripped molecules away. The air thinned, pressure fell, temperatures plunged. Water without thick atmosphere to keep it warm, and without pressure to keep it stable, abandoned the surface. Some escaped to space. Much of it froze into the subsurface, locked in ice, and buried reservoirs, or retreated to the polar caps. What may have been a mild world perhaps for hundreds of millions of years, perhaps longer, hardened into the cold, oxidizing desert we see now. Not dead in the sense of stillness, Mars still has wind dust seasons, but dead in the sense that it no longer forgives exposure. Today, the surface is hostile to unprotected biology. The thin air doesn't block radiation. Cosmic rays and solar particles strike the ground with far less resistance than they meet on Earth. Measurements show that under certain conditions, radiation levels in the surface dust can be comparable to environments we consider catastrophically dangerous on our own world. If life exists there now, it likely hides beneath rock, beneath soil, beneath layers that can soften the cosmic bombardment. And yet we keep looking, not for footprints, not for waving creatures on the horizon. We look for fingerprints, subtle chemical patterns, isotopic ratios, organic molecules, preserved in ancient mudstones. We look for structures that biology tends to leave behind when it has time, water, and a stable home. This is why Perseverance's sample tubes matter so much. Because a rover can only be a field notebook, not a full laboratory. It can suggest, it can hint, it can whisper possibilities, but proof demands instruments we can't send. It demands Earth's best microscopes, its mass spectrometers, its clean rooms. The entire weight of our scientific civilization focused on grains of Martian sediment. And there's another kind of future embedded in this story, one that is not about chemistry, but about courage. Perseverance did not arrive alone. In its belly rode Ingenuity, a helicopter so light it feels like a thought made visible. Its rotors had to spin about 4 times faster than a typical Earth drone, just to bite into air that barely counts as air. And then one day, it rose. The first powered flight on another planet. A small machine lifting itself into the alien sky, as if defying the idea that Mars must always be walked, never flown. For a while, it became Perseverance's scout mapping routes, revealing hazards, gifting us aerial perspectives that made the landscape feel less like a painting and more like a place. Until 2024, when Ingenuity suffered a collision on a dune and broke one of its rotors. After an emergency landing, it was left motionless alive in electronics but grounded forever. Perseverance photographed it like a monument fragile ambition, resting in rust-colored sand. It's poetic in a way that science rarely admits that Ingenuity carried a small fragment of fabric from the Wright brothers' Flyer, the first airplane into the sky of another world. A thread from the beginning of flight stretched across a century, tied to the first moment humanity touched the air of Mars. And that is the future we are building. Not a single leap, but a chain of unlikely steps. Wheels, wings, sample tubes, return missions. Each one a message that we are not finished asking the universe what else can live. One day, curiosity's wheels will finally refuse to turn. A gear will seize. A circuit will fail. A heater will go quiet in the bitter Martian dawn, and the cold will do what it always does, slowly, patiently, without malice. The rover will drift into sleep beneath a sky that never learned how to hold warmth. Mars will be its tomb, silent, red, and indifferent. Perseverance will continue for a while, after that dutiful and tireless climbing through the fossil delta of Jezero, like a reader moving up the spine of a book. It will keep firing lasers, drilling cores, sealing its samples, each tube a small metallic syllable in a sentence we won't be able to finish until we bring those rocks home. And then eventually it too will join the growing cemetery of our machines. Spirit, half buried in sand, opportunity frozen under dust-darkened skies, Ingenuity motionless among stones like an artifact from a future museum. From a certain distance, it can seem grim, this habit we have of sending our creations to die in places we cannot yet survive. But step closer and the meaning changes, because these are not just missions. They are extensions of the human nervous system, reaching into the dark. When a rover looks at a horizon, we look. When it tastes a rock, we taste. When it watches a blue sunset spill across a rusted plain, something inside us recognizes beauty where no eyes were meant to be. That recognition is not small. Mars teaches cosmic vertigo, the kind that arrives when you see Earth as a pale dot hovering above an alien horizon, and suddenly every border, every argument, every private fear feels like it was drawn on the surface of a grain of sand. It teaches it again when you stand through a camera inside a crater that once held a lake, and you realize oceans can vanish, atmospheres can be stripped away, worlds can change their minds. And if Mars can lose its water, then Earth can lose its illusions. That is the quiet gift hidden in these images: perspective. A forced humility. Proof that habitability is not a permanent state, but a delicate arrangement. Heat pressure, shielding time balanced on a knife edge we rarely notice until we look outward and see what happens when that balance breaks. And still, the story is not only caution, it is hope measured, skeptical, and stubborn. Because the rocks keep insisting that Mars was once different, that rivers carved valleys, that deltas bloomed into lakes, that chemistry had the time to become complicated. And where chemistry becomes complicated for long enough, life has a habit of trying. Maybe it succeeded, maybe it failed. Maybe it persists in hidden pockets beneath the ground in places our drills have not yet reached. Or maybe the only life Mars ever hosted is the kind we sent their metal bodies animated by human intention, carrying questions across an empty planet. Either way, we are not finished. Those sample tubes, waiting in the dust, are more than geology. They are a promise that we will return, that we will listen closer, that we will not let the story end on silence. And until the last watt fades, these machines will keep spending their remaining energy to send us portraits of places no living being had ever seen before. Worlds that make our own feel suddenly rare. So when you think of Mars, don't imagine only a red desert. Imagine a blue sunset over a dying world, and a lone rover beneath it reading the planet's ancient memory aloud into the dark, so that across millions of kilometers, a fragile world of oceans can hear its echo and understand itself a little better.